The United States has long been a magnet for foreign investment. Chinese investments in the U.S. have surged in recent decades. This influx has raised concerns in Washington. Policymakers worry about undue influence and potential espionage. The Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, or CFIUS, reviews these investments. CFIUS can recommend blocking investments that threaten national security. Its decisions are not subject to judicial review, making it a potent tool. On February 21, 2025, President Donald Trump took a significant step to curb Chinese investments in the U.S. He signed an executive order directing CFIUS to intensify its scrutiny of Chinese investments in a wide range of sectors deemed critical to U.S. national security. This directive signaled a hardening of the U.S. stance toward Chinese investment and marked a new chapter in the complex relationship between the world's two largest economies. The executive order was met with immediate reactions from both sides of the Pacific. Chinese officials expressed disappointment and warned of potential retaliation. American businesses, while acknowledging the national security concerns, voiced anxieties about the impact of the restrictions on their operations and the broader business climate. The February directive was more than just an economic policy, it was a geopolitical statement. It underscored the growing rivalry between the U.S. and China and highlighted the Trump administration's commitment to prioritizing American economic interests, even if it meant disrupting global trade flows. This decisive action set the stage for a period of heightened tension and uncertainty in U.S. China relations, with far-reaching implications for the global economy and the balance of power in the 21st century. The February 21st directive cast a wide net, targeting a range of sectors deemed vital to U.S. national security and technological leadership. These sectors included, but were not limited to, technology, telecommunications, energy, agriculture, healthcare, and critical infrastructure. Within the technology sector, areas of particular concern included artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and advanced semiconductor manufacturing. These cutting-edge technologies are seen as crucial to both economic competitiveness and military superiority in the 21st century, and the U.S. government is determined to prevent China from gaining a strategic advantage in these fields. The telecommunications sector was another key area of focus, reflecting anxieties about Chinese companies gaining access to sensitive U.S. data and potentially using their technology for espionage purposes. The energy sector was targeted due to concerns about Chinese control over critical energy infrastructure and resources. Agriculture, healthcare, and critical infrastructure were also singled out due to their importance to national security and the potential for disruption or sabotage. The broad scope of the directive underscored the Trump administration's view that China's economic ambitions posed a multifaceted threat to U.S. interests, requiring a comprehensive response. Investments was a deep-seated concern about economic espionage and the theft of intellectual property. U.S. officials had long accused China of engaging in cyber attacks and other illicit activities to steal trade secrets and technology from American companies and research institutions. These concerns were not limited to the Trump administration. They were shared by both Democrats and Republicans in Congress, as well as by many business leaders and national security experts. The U.S. government had amassed a considerable body of evidence documenting Chinese efforts to acquire sensitive U.S. technology through illegal means. The Trump administration argued that these activities posed a direct threat to American economic competitiveness and national security. They asserted that China was using stolen technology to bolster its military capabilities and gain an unfair advantage in the global marketplace. The February directive was seen as a necessary step to protect American innovation and safeguard the country's economic future. By restricting Chinese investments in sensitive sectors, the Trump administration aimed to make it more difficult for China to acquire U.S. technology through illicit means and level the playing field for American businesses. The February 21st executive order was not an isolated incident. It was part of a broader pattern of actions taken by the Trump administration to counter what it perceived as China's unfair trade practices and aggressive economic ambitions. From the outset of his presidency, Trump had taken a confrontational approach toward China, accusing it of manipulating its currency, dumping cheap goods on the global market, and stealing American jobs. He had imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods, sparking a trade war between the world's two largest economies. The Trump administration had also taken steps to restrict Chinese companies' access to sensitive U.S. technology. It had blacklisted several Chinese tech giants, including Huawei, preventing them from doing business with American companies without special permission. These actions had been met with mixed reactions. Some observers praised Trump for taking a tough stance against China and defending American economic interests. Others criticized his approach, arguing that it was counterproductive and risked damaging the global economy. Section 6. A united front bipartisan support for economic security. The Trump administration's confrontational approach towards China drew criticism, but concerns about Chinese economic espionage and unfair trade practices resonated across the political spectrum. There was a growing bipartisan consensus in Washington to protect U.S. economic interests and counter China's influence. This was evident in the support for the February 21st directive. Broad agreement existed on protecting the U.S. technological edge and preventing illicit gains by China. The directive marked a rare moment of bipartisan agreement on foreign policy. It underscored the seriousness with which the U.S. viewed the challenges posed by China. Section 7. Shifting sands, reshaping the global trade landscape. The Trump administration's decision to curb Chinese investments sent shockwaves through the global economy. For decades, the U.S. had been the world's leading advocate for free trade and open markets. However, the February 21st directive signaled a shift away from this long-standing commitment and raised concerns about a retreat from globalization. The directive also had the potential to disrupt global supply chains. Many multinational companies had come to rely on China as a manufacturing hub, and restrictions on Chinese investments could force them to rethink their global operations. This could lead to higher costs, production delays, and increased uncertainty for businesses around the world. Moreover, the directive threatened to further escalate tensions between the U.S. and China, the world's two largest economies. A trade war between these two economic giants would have far-reaching consequences, potentially leading to a slowdown in global growth and increased instability in financial markets. Section 8. Charting the course. The unfolding impact of the directive. In the wake of the February 21st directive, businesses and investors around the world watched anxiously to see how the new restrictions would be implemented. The directive itself was broadly worded, leaving considerable discretion to CFIUS in determining which transactions to scrutinize and how to apply the new guidelines. The early signs suggested that CFIUS would take a cautious approach, focusing on transactions involving sensitive technologies and critical infrastructure. However, the uncertainty surrounding the implementation of the directive created a chilling effect on Chinese investment in the U.S. Many Chinese companies chose to delay or abandon planned investments, fearing that they would be met with lengthy reviews and potential rejection by CFIUS. The Trump administration maintained that the directive was not intended to halt Chinese investment in the U.S. altogether. They argued that the goal was to create a level playing field and ensure that Chinese investments benefited both countries, rather than undermining U.S. national security or economic competitiveness. Section 9. The road ahead, navigating the future of U.S. China relations. The February 21st directive marked a turning point in the U.S. China relationship. It signaled a shift towards a more confrontational approach and raised the prospect of a new Cold War between the world's two superpowers. The directive was just one manifestation of the growing rivalry between the U.S. and China, which extended beyond trade to encompass competition for technological dominance, military superiority, and geopolitical influence. The challenge for both countries was to manage this rivalry in a way that did not lead to conflict. Both the U.S. and China had a shared interest in avoiding a catastrophic confrontation, and there were areas where cooperation remained possible, such as climate change and nuclear non-proliferation. However, the deep mistrust and suspicion that had come to characterize the U.S.-China relationship made it difficult to find common ground. The February 21st directive was a stark reminder of the challenges ahead as the two countries navigated an increasingly complex and uncertain geopolitical landscape.